Okay, our next set with imaginary numbers. Now, we've talked about add and subtract when the I is already given, okay? That's what we did up here. We added and subtract where you were already given the imaginary number, okay? But what if you're not given it as an imaginary number? So let's look at D, okay? These are given with the negative under the radical, okay? Everybody see that? You got this negative and negative. So we need to simplify our radicals. So first step is to simplify your radical. Okay? So again, and I realize some of you may be able to skip a step or two, but I want to write down everything we're doing. So I'm taking the negative 1 out. Again, the negative 1 is I. Square root of 16 is 4. The best way to write that again is 4i. Over here on the second part, the square root of a negative 1 again is I. Square root of 49 is 7. We're going to rewrite it as just 7i. Now we're just doing an adding of like terms. So 4 minus 7 would be a negative 3, and again I, because we're just adding like terms. Okay? E. Now, when you look at this, guys, this both has a square root of 2. Since they're both square root of 2's, that again is like a like terms. As long as we have what we call like radicals, you can add them together. So all we're going to need to do is add our numerators, or sorry, not our numerators, our coefficients. So I have an I and a 6 and a 5i, so that's 6i, and it just stays on radical 2. Okay, you see what I did? So the radical 2 is kind of like your x, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, let's find some more. Let's go to number 6. So the square root of a negative 3 and the square root of a negative 27. So first I'm going to do what I told you, simplify your radical. Negative 1 and 3. Over here I have the negative 1 and 27. So the square root of a negative 1 is I. I can't do anything with the square root of 3. That's going to stay. Here, the square root of a negative 1 is I. And I'm going to simplify my square root of 27. So what is the largest perfect square that will go into 27? 9 and 3. So the square root of 9 is 3. I've got the I and square root of 3. So when I do write this, okay, if you'll notice what I did, I said the square root of 9 was 3, and I do put that whole number in front of my I, just like what I did over here with the 9i, same process that I told you. I don't write it as I9, I do 9i. Okay, next step is just like I told you before. Since these both have radical 3, I just put together my coefficients. So I have an I plus a 3i, that's going to give me 4i square root of 3. Okay. Let's look at number 7, kind of jumping around because they've got these mixed up. So, same thing here. The i's already out. Square root of 18, I'm going to simplify that. So what's the perfect square in 18? Hopefully you know 9 and 2. I'm going to go ahead and simplify this, and then we'll work with the 8. So the square root of 9 is 3. I've got the I and the square root of 2. Now let's come over and let's simplify the square root of a negative 8. So I have the negative 1 and the 8. The square root of a negative 1 is I. And then what is my perfect square in 8? Now, if you wanted to, and you were okay, you could skip this step and just go straight to this next one. but I'm going to put it in. So what's the perfect square in 8? That would be 4 and 2. And so I'm just going to rewrite this. And the square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 2. Again, the square roots are the same, so I can just add my coefficients. So I have 5i square root 2. Final answer. Okay, I'm going to do one more of this kind. So the square root of a negative 2. Again, I can break it down into negative 1 and 2. Square root of 50, negative 1. And if you want to go ahead and say, okay, what perfect squares in 50? We did that on an earlier video, 25 and 2. So here, the square root of negative 1 is I. Square root of 2 can't simplify. Next one, square root of a negative 1 is I. Square root of 25 is 5. I'm going to put that out in front. And then I can't simplify the square root of 2. So this is now a subtraction. Again, your square root of 2's are the same. So I just put my imaginary numbers together. So I have 3 minus 5 is a negative 2i. Final answer. Okay. So again, you're just going to practice more of those.